Oyster farming has a long tradition, and while methods may vary, the idea is the same. Grow oysters from seedling to maturity in cages or trays in tidal flats or shallows, and redistribute the shellfish at various stages of development to prevent damage to developing shells, and relieve weight pressure when oysters are stacked in layers. These traditional farming tactics work, but require time-intensive, repetitive manual labor in order to succeed. Geert Kinthaert's innovative idea of shellfish curtains is partly based on the modern way to grow grass turf by utilizing a porous blanket of fabric that can be rolled out in one step. This method can be used in a home's backyard, but also in large-scale erosion control projects. Shellfish curtains would aspire to a cradle-to-grave process both in shallow and coastal farming and deep ocean applications. The oyster seed or spat would be set on porous marine fabric and allowed to grow to maturity in one place as it would in the wild. Mr. Kinthaert spoke recently about the idea on Cape Cod, home of several traditional oyster farms.
Concept of shellfish curtains. What do they deliver above and beyond what the cages do? They give you mobility. You're able to take them out of the way of storms, put them in desirable water where there's more nutrients. You can embed the oysters cradle to grave. I mean, there's no moving around the animals in cages. You plant them once, let them grow the next 3 to 5 years. And I got the idea from the pre-seeded grass mats the local contractors work with. They put them out, water them, and done. It grows. It's a similar concept. One of the big challenges we're going to have is deciding what material to use. The examples you're going to see today are burlap. What we're looking for is a porous material, meaning that it has the ability to let water through. You know, it could be cells or some kind of matrix structure. The other thing is we like it to be buoyant, not floating on top of the water because we don't want the gulls to pick up our oysters, but we want it to be light enough to play with the ocean currents. Recyclable would be nice. I was originally thinking the polypropylene sheets. I'm sure there's more advanced materials available. Maybe they will disintegrate over time. Going back to the grass mat example, those things are organic and go away over time. What we have to keep in mind, however, is that the life cycle of the oyster is 3 to 5 years, so we want to have these materials around or available at least for that time period. Shellfish curtains, they can be done in one of two ways. One is to use marine adhesives or glue. What we want to do is take a material, which in this case is burlap, but it could be anything. The new material that you will come up with, or polypropylene, which was my first idea. Seed it with the oyster seed, which ranges in size from 2 to 8 millimeters. Let them grow to mature size over the course of 3 to 5 years, then harvest them. So, again, the material should be, in place for that period of time. Another way to do this is to think of embedding the shellfish or oysters in a form of webbing or double layered material. I'm calling it encapsulated fibrous webbing approach, which will basically look like this. If the oysters in a web or a netting, they'll grow in place, and the way to harvest them will be to peel back one layer potentially. Again, this is something that we have to discover in product research. But whether it be the adhesive approach or the webbing approach, either would work potentially. Okay, now we have the material selected and we have the oysters grown on the surface. Now what's next? Well, the practical approach is to deploy these oysters into the wild, into their environment. One way to do this is a coastal approach. You can hang the nets or the shellfish curtains in this particular way. Imagine a water surface, ebb and flood. These things can be kept in place. Bad weather shows up, these things can be rolled up, redeployed somewhere else. But this is a way of deploying that's fairly similar to what the oyster farmers do nowadays, like in lieu of cages. Just imagine the material being impregnated with oysters, growing, hundreds of tons of oysters. The more ambitious approach is to have the oyster curtains deployed in deeper waters. Just imagine shellfish curtains on a line many miles, hundreds of miles long deployed in a bay or estuary, doing their work, either filtration or growing for food.
So what we're talking about here is a product and a process that delivers above and beyond what the cage method of oyster farming allows. Shellfish curtains would allow for mobility, the ability to take the shellfish away from storms, relocate them to more desirable water where there are more nutrients. It's a cradle-to-grave solution. There's no moving of the oysters around in cages or handling of the shellfish as they develop. Currently, that's time and labor intensive. This way, you plant them once, let them grow for 3 to 5 years. And the idea originated from seed-impregnated grass mats that landscape contractors use. In terms of materials, it needs to be porous, allow for water to pass through. A cell or matrix structure could work. In research, you could look at surgical fabric all the way to geosynthetic landscaping products. In terms of buoyancy, the fabric needs to be light enough to play with ocean currents and not break or impede other sea life, and also not float on top of the water. The lifespan of the material would need to follow the oyster's natural development and beyond. The time frame for oysters as a food source is 3 to 5 years. As a filtration resource, 10 years or more. Oyster seeds or spat are only a few millimeters wide. How would we attach them to the shellfish curtains? Possibly a marine adhesive or glue, or the actual structure of the curtains by using webbing or a double layer of material. They can be deployed in coastal areas or also deep ocean, depending on what type of pattern. Wave pattern was for shallow, clothesline pattern for deep. And not only could shellfish curtains be applied to local farming operations, they could also be utilized on a massive scale in deep waters, with harvested oysters made available as a food source for developing countries, for example, or as a potential filtering system for harbor areas with water pollution issues.